All right, this is chapter 30, plant function. These are how plants respond to their environment. And it's somewhat different than how animals respond to their environment. Primarily, we're talking about growth, movement of water and solutes from the root to the leaves, and the movement of sugars and organic molecules through the phloem. And what usually coordinates these things are hormone molecules. So just a review of plant structures. You have a shoot system and a root system. The shoot system contains the vegetative parts of the plant above the ground, stems and leaves, as well as the reproductive parts, which include flowers and fruits. The root system supports the plant. It absorbs water and minerals from the soil, and it's usually underground, although you can have some aerial roots and adventitious roots and things like that. Okay, we've talked a little bit about the types of plant tissues, the epidermis that forms the outer layer of the plant, the vascular tissues that conduct water and sugars and organic molecules from the leaves to other parts of the plant, and then the tissues called ground tissues that are involved in metabolism, storage, and support. And so that's the main thing that we talked about last time. Here we're talking really about plant responses to the environmental cues around them. Plants' responses are usually in the form of growth, to direct growth or increase growth or decrease growth. They may affect the movement of water or the movement of things that are made by photosynthesis in the leaves, like sugars, starches, and things like that, or the production of secondary compounds, additional molecules that are not needed for photosynthesis or water movement. One of the key things to remember is that plants differ from animals, where most animal responses are coordinated by a nervous system, and many of them are carried out through the action of muscles. Plants have neither of those tissues. They're trapped pretty much in place, and their responses are growth, water movement, or movement of sap, or production of different chemicals to be stored in the tissues. These things can't be coordinated by a nervous system. Plants don't have one. So instead, they're releasing chemical signals, hormones. And these hormones include a bunch of molecules that you may or may not have heard of: auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins. Those also all stimulate plant growth. And so help plants grow upwards, help plants grow towards light, help plants grow more in one direction than another. Things like abscisic acid or ethylene can help fruits mature or enter dormancy, things like that. Many of these things are going to affect specific tissues. Like here you see the vascular tissues, xylem and phloem. And so plant hormones can affect them, how much they move materials, the rate at which they move them, which direction. Stem components are drastically affected, as well as where things grow. And so you can affect these meristem tissues. And these apical meristem tissues are on the tip of the plant or the tip of the root or the tip of a twig, and so can direct growth very specifically. But you can also have secondary growth. Apical meristems are primary growth. Lateral meristems or intercalary meristems, these affect secondary growth or growth in width. And not only does this thing happen, of course, in the shoot system, but it also happens in the root system. You have vascular tissues in the inner part of the root, both the xylem and phloem, and you also have meristem tissues all over. Okay, and so that's the basic story with plants, is that plants are growing, moving different substances, or producing compounds. They can't run away. They can't respond with the things animals can respond with, but they can do a lot. One of the most important things for plants is to control the movement of water, and they do this by affecting water potential. Water potential means that it's the energy of water, and this is affected by a whole host of different things that the plant can control. One of the biggest things the plant can control is solute pressure. The plant can move ions, and because they can push ions out into solutions, that can force water to move in that direction. And these are solute potentials, but they affect the potential of water and where water goes. These potentials are really expressions of energy. The higher the pressure, the more potential energy in a system, and vice versa. Um, Plants maintain low pressure in their leaves, and they do this by evaporating water. So water's continually moving away, and that helps them pull water up to the highest part of the plant. Okay, this is the cohesion tension theory. And so when plants open their stoma, these are their little pores in their leaves, evaporation occurs because the plant is using water, and water is being released into the atmosphere. And so this creates a very low potential pressure there, which help pulls water up through the conductive tissues. And that helps pull water into the roots. And so this water potential of the atmosphere pulls water away from the tree, which helps pull water up the stem and into the roots. Okay, and so transpiration is the main driver of water movement in the plant, and this is, of course, in the xylem tissue. This is caused by evaporation of water, and it creates negative pressure that's pulling water up. And the plants can regulate this. They can regulate this by how impermeable the cuticle is, the epidermis of their leaves, and by regulating transpiration, which is by opening and closing of the stoma on the leaf surface. They can also reduce water potential by moving solutes. Those are the things dissolved in water. Okay, I won't ask you to do any calculations on water potentials, but it's important to know that water potential is important and plants can control it. And it affects how plants, in herbaceous plants, it produces what's called turgor pressure, which helps the plant not wilt so that the stems are erect and that the leaves are fully open. And when water pressure drops, the plant wilts, and that can save additional water. In addition, plants control the movement of photosynthates, okay, the products of photosynthesis through the phloem. And they do this by controlling the movement of sap by having the cells that are adjacent to the phloem tubes moving materials. And so these cells can move materials into and out of the phloem tubes, okay, and that's going to cause the movement of phloem. So, for instance, the xylem is moving water up, and it's very close to the cells of the phloem, and the phloem can move water away, and that will pull sap downward. And so by moving water from the lower parts of the phloem tubes, that will actually cause movement of fluid in the phloem tubes to go downward, to bring things downward. And so it allows the cells to pull sugars down towards the roots where they're needed. Plants also can respond to light. They respond to lights in lots of ways, by growing towards light, by moving towards light, by changing structures based upon the light. And plants have specific molecules that do that. Those are the phytochromes, proteins that respond to light, and these can control growth and act as a signal for controlling growth. They control germination and seasonal responses. Okay, these are protein-based receptors that mediate responses. Some act best to red light, some act best to blue light. Okay, and so some parts of the plant may grow away from light, like the roots. Other parts may grow toward light. But these are mediated by various different molecules that are hormone molecules. And so plants are able to do a wide variety of things through this action.